Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I do hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this night-ending bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this night-ending bonus upload. Shall we? All right, so if you caught today's opening upload where I discussed the Tom Mezek case, shared the half-hour footage that I have from being up where he disappeared multiple times, and talked a lot about how these creatures use portals, and the government uses these creatures as intimidation tactics and such. I had talked about a case where a gentleman from Texas had something very similar happen to him as the soldier, naval intelligence officer actually, Axelrod, when he investigated the Nimitz Tic Tac. And when he came home from that investigation, he was met with shadow people in his home. His children, his wife were seeing them, orbs, and dogmen. His wife was seeing dogmen, and his two teenage boys were seeing dogmen. They'd never seen them before this. They never saw anything strange. They lived in a beautiful kind of gated community in an upscale part of Virginia. And then I said it was very similar to a gentleman out of Texas who had his own experience. He and his daughter had got some footage of a strange UFO-like craft and submitted the video to MUFON. Turns out the gentleman who they gave the video to, or shared the video with, they did not give the video to this person. They wanted it very badly. But it turns out that the guy was not from MUFON at all. And he was met with dogmen being near his home, an intimidation factor. And then at the end of his whole experience, the real guy from MUFON finally contacts him months later and says, he said, hey, I've already met with somebody from MUFON. He's like, we don't have anybody that even resembles. He's like, there's two people in the state of Texas that works with us here, and I'm one of them. So this is that gentleman's experience. Hey, Jeff, how are you doing? This happened on November 9th, 2016. I was sitting in my front media room watching some YouTube. It was around 7:40 p.m. in the evening. My wife had just taken our two dogs out into the backyard. The backyard is fenced in, but we have a pool, and the entrance door to the backyard has an 8-inch gap between the deck and the gate, due to the pool deck entrance being higher. So we have a lot of rabbits that come into our backyard and burrow under the shrubs inside the backyard. And my neighbor lets his cats come out, and they know exactly where to find the rabbits. So you can probably figure it out. that makes a series of ongoing chaos trying to keep my dogs from going after the rabbits or the cats. Anyway, my wife starts yelling my name over and over again, and I, of course, think I'm going to have to break up a fight between my dogs and a cat, or stop my dogs from killing a rabbit or chasing one into the pool. So I run outside, freaking out, and I don't see my wife trying to break up a fight or stop them from chasing a rabbit. Instead, I see my wife looking up to the left at my neighbor's house. So let me lay out my neighborhood really quick in order to get an idea of what I am talking about. It is very bizarre. At least it is to me. I live in Allen, Texas, not out in the middle of the country, but a densely populated area, and my neighborhood is slightly upper middle class neighborhood. Most of the neighborhood has two-story homes. Ironically, my home is a single-story home, sitting between two two-story homes. Now, we do have fields and parks surrounding most of the neighborhoods. So, now that I gave you a quick description of my surroundings, I will continue with what my wife is looking at. So I look to my neighbor's home, which at first I thought my wife was looking at some animal on the neighbor's roof, but nope. About 30 feet above my neighbor's home is a UFO. It is cylinder in shape with 5 appendages sticking out, what I think is the base of the craft. The craft is about 15 to 20 feet in length and 10 to 12 feet in width. Looks like it's on fire, shifting from bright orange to a dark orange and red. To be more accurate, it looked more like it was phasing, which is why I believe it looked like it was changing colors or on fire. You know how you always look at pictures or videos of UFOs and they always look blurry? Well, I think that is why people can't get a clear picture or clear video, due to this type of phasing going on. So I start yelling to my daughter to grab my video camera, because this would have been probably the closest I or anyone would have a recording of a UFO. But I guess this UFO detected our voices, or saw my wife and I, and it started to raise up and move away. In the meantime, my daughter brings out my video camera, which is a Sony Handycam DVD, which, if anyone has ever owned one, knows it doesn't exactly have the fastest boot up on startup. So I'm impatiently waiting for my camera to boot up, and the UFO is slowly flying away. I run into the house and grab my Windows 10 phone, which I've owned at the time, and didn't have the best camera in the world, but I wasn't one to have phone to take pictures or videos, just to make phone calls. But I managed to get a couple of pictures of the UFO, as it was the end of my alley in the neighborhood. And right at the time my camera finally decides to say ready and grab about 3 seconds of this video in night vision. Well, you would have thought it was over, and my wife said, "Well, that was cool," and proceeded to go inside. My daughter and I are still watching this UFO, and make the quick decision to go after it in hopes of getting a better shot. So I grabbed my wife's car keys, since they were closer, and proceed to chase this UFO through 3 towns. I had to have taken the public streets and obeyed the traffic laws, whereas the UFO did not. Needless to say, I never caught up to it, but had an interesting story to tell to my friends and family. Well, a few days go by, and Saturday comes along, and I take my daughter to the mall. We get back a few hours later, around 1:30 p.m., and my wife is in the room looking like death warmed over her. She was fine when we left just a few hours earlier. Well, I'm obviously very concerned and ask her what is wrong. She tells me that she took the dogs out into the backyard, and she's in the yard near the right side neighbor's 2-story house. She looks up because she thought she saw a flock of geese fly over. You know, that V pattern they fly in. Well, she said once she looked up, she quickly realized that it was not a flock of geese, but as she put it, a grayish silver-looking triangle craft. And she said she only saw the front nose of it before it completely vanished, right in front of her. She grabbed the dogs and went directly inside, and within a half an hour she started feeling very sick, so she laid down. She was white as a ghost. She stayed sick for weeks, which is highly unusual for my wife. Nothing she took really helped. My wife is probably one of the strongest persons I've ever known. She used to do barrel racing. She's raised longhorn, horses, and other livestock, part of the family business. And yeah, I know it sounds like the typical stereotype Texas redneck lifestyle, but my wife was anything but a cowgirl. I guess that's the correct label or stereotype. She was raised that way due to her family living on a ranch. She's probably one of the strongest people I have ever known. She's only 5 foot and has had more medical issues than most people in their life. So when she gets sick, it's usually pretty bad. We try and live a healthy lifestyle and work out regularly and eat only plant-based. So this is really starting to concern me. After a few weeks, she's starting to recover. Now, during this time, I would go outside at different times of the night and take my video camera out just in case. Well, I actually managed to videotape another UFO directly behind my house. Now, when they say UFOs can change shape, that is true, at least from what I witnessed. This UFO actually looked like a water tower. Sounds unbelievable, I know. The only problem was that there are no water towers directly behind my house, and plus water towers don't hover in the air and tilt 40 degrees to one side. So, I video recorded this UFO for about 30 minutes. It was 27 degrees outside at the time, and I was really starting to freeze. Anyway, after this, I decided to go on the MUFON site and send in what we saw. Within days, I got a phone call from what I thought was a MUFON investigator. At least he claimed to be, and said he saw my report online and would love to come and speak to me and my family about our sightings. We set an appointed time during the week and he came out. We went over what my family had seen. I show him the pictures and video I had taken. He then said that there had been several people in my area reporting UFOs also, which I thought was pretty neat considering you usually only hear people having sightings of UFOs in the country, rural areas or out in the desert, and very rarely groups of people witnessing them at the same time or the same area. He asked if he could have the pictures and video I had. I told him that he could not have my original, but I'd be more than happy to make him copies and send them to him. He didn't seem very happy about that at the time, which I thought was a little odd, but I didn't give it too much thought. So he agrees, and then if I or my family have any more sightings, to please give him a call, which I did, but he would never return any of my calls afterward. So about another week and a half goes by, and I go out front to get the daily mail drop. It's about 5:25 p.m., and I get the mail out front, and then I hear, and I kid you not, a Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter flying only 75 feet above me. I'm quite familiar with military aircraft since I've been around them all my life. Plus, this one was all blacked. A little unusual for flying around in the city. Anyway, this Black Hawk then stops, hovers right in front of me. Again, I live in the city, in a very large neighborhood, so it's not like this seemed very random to me, especially since we seemed to have been staring each other down. After a couple of minutes, I guess the pilot figured out I wasn't going anywhere, since I continued to stare back at them, and finally decided to fly off. I could swear the pilot gave me a wave before leaving. So I go in and tell my wife what had just happened, and she said she thought the helicopter seemed really close, and said that was very weird. I agreed with her, of course, so again, I call this guy, I think works for MUFON, and leave a message and tell him what had just happened, because this kind of stuff just does not happen to me or my family, and of course, no return call. Also, let me add that there are no military bases in my area. The closest one used to be in Grand Prairie, Texas, which had closed down years ago. So where did this UH-60 Black Hawk come from is beyond me. So after that, for about 4 to 6 months, I get a flyover directly over my house between 2:30 and 3 a.m. Again, they fly as low as possible. My wife and I had no idea who to call. It's not like we could call the local police and complain about a Black Hawk helicopter flying over my home. And could they please tell them to stop harassing my family with flyovers every night? So during this time, I'm starting to stay up later and later because I want to catch these bozos in the act. Not that I could really do anything anyway. Also, out of habit, when I go into the kitchen, I always look out front and check out the neighbors' cars to make sure no one is coming into our neighborhood and vandalizing any of the cars or homes. This has happened a few times in the past. So I'm looking outside, and lo and behold, walks by the biggest, what I thought was a coyote or even a wolf. Now, we do have coyotes around, and they will on a rare occasion come into our neighborhood. But this, whatever it was, walks right up in front and stops at the mailbox. Now my mailbox stands at least 4.5 feet tall, or 53 inches, from the base of the street to the top of my mailbox. My mailbox is bricked, so it's a little higher than most. Anyway, this coyote, wolf, or whatever walked from the left side of my street, completely ignoring the other neighbors' mailboxes or homes. And it walks and stops right in front of my mailbox. At the time, I had never read stories about cryptids other than stories about Sasquatch. Now I've heard that coyotes and wolves would now and then interbreed together and you would get a cross between the two, but I never heard or saw one this big. It was gray with coarse-looking fur and a very wide body and a really long. Never ever saw a coyote or a wolf that wide. Now, I later on heard about what they refer to as Dogman, which, from the description, matched exactly what I saw. I used to own a shepherd wolf, and she was bigger than most shepherds, lanky, and pretty big, but nowhere near this size. Also, when it got in front of my mailbox, which my front kitchen window was directly facing, this creature looked up and stared directly at me. I don't know if it knew I was staring at it, or just looked up to see if it could see inside the house, or looking for a small animal. But when it did, it stood there and just stared at me for about, 15 to 20 seconds. I saw a little of its teeth and its eye shine, but there wasn't any direct light for it to have eye shine, just this golden, little reddish eye shine, which I also thought was odd. I mean, it moved its head a little, and the color changed to that reddish color, but could have been just me. But I did think the eye shine was odd, considering there was no direct light on its eyes. There was a street lamp on the corner, but it was behind the animal. Anyway, after it gave me the stare down, it walked off like nothing happened at all. I watched it walk to the corner of my street, and walked right down the other street, and that was it. Now, what does this have to do with everything that has been going on so far? I don't know, but with everything else going on during that time, it seemed very odd. Whatever creature, wolf or mutated coyote, whatever it was, walked right to the front of my house, and I've never been one to believe in coincidence. But I never go outside late at night anymore to get the mail or open my garage door and work in the garage without keeping or carrying a weapon on my person or near me in the garage. That's just how nervous that creature made me, and I've never been bothered or scared of any animal. So anyway, the flyovers continue. Around 6 months later, my daughter and I go outside, and we're going to do our usual walk around the neighborhood, and I look up and I see 13 military transports flying over going west, and I tell my daughter to look up and watch. Because again, we do not have any military bases around my area, and also these transports are not flying in a regular civilian flight pattern for aircraft. But then again, these are military and not civilian aircraft. So we're watching them, and all of a sudden, one transport turns north, the next one turns south, and the next continue to go west, and in this pattern continues till the last one. So, after that, I get no more flyovers that night, and everything goes back to normal. At least, I thought it was. A few weeks later, I get a call from a MUFON investigator apologizing for taking so long to get back to me. gives me his name and starts to ask me questions. I then proceed to tell him that I already had a MUFON investigator come out and talk with me, that I had showed him my pictures and videos, and then told him everything that had transpired, leaving out the oversized mutated coyote or wolf thing I saw. Then he proceeds to ask me for the other investigator's name, which I gave him. He then proceeds to tell me, and I quote, "I have never heard of this person, and there is only one other person besides myself that investigates your area." I asked him who else has access to your files besides MUFON, and he said it should be no one else. I said, well, you should find out, and I would like to know who came to my home and why my family got harassed for months with flyovers from military helicopters. Was it because I didn't give my original pictures and videos over to this guy? I guess I will never know. Now, there are more details I am leaving out of this because, to be honest, I just don't know who would believe it. I find it hard to believe, and my wife and I went through it. But this covers the Dogman and the majority of what happened to us during this time. Alright guys, and when I had him on, it was a great interview. Super nice guy. He did share a couple of photos with me. I'm going to have to go through my camera roll and see if I can find them. I just checked real quick. If I do come across them, I will post them on my community page. I have his phone number still, so maybe I'll give him a holler and see how everything's going. Yeah, just definitely terrifying. Now, one of the reasons why he felt that it was a Dogman, or whatever you want to call it, werewolf, what have you, is because there's been numerous accounts of the military using these canine cryptids to intimidate or stalk civilians or just regular humans in general. And not just on my channel. So I'm not gonna make a claim to fame that, you know, this and that. But I've heard from numerous people that they've heard different stories that the military does use these creatures as kind of the super soldier, let's say. I mean, what else is, you know, gonna stir up the crap but a super soldier Dogman? It's just very strange how you've got the Black Hawks, this guy who doesn't work for MUFON, and this abnormally sized canine coming at your house. Just strange, if you ask me. So, like I said, if I do find the pictures, I will post them on my community page. I do have his phone number, so maybe I'll throw him a text. Or if he's listening, please send me an email and let me know how you're doing. And possibly, if you could, throw in a couple pics. Alright, let's move on. Today's second Texas subscriber submission. This subscriber had actually shared a submission back in Oklahoma as well. This is her second encounter she had. Hey Jeff, how are you? I happened to see a white wolf creature this morning. I work security overnight at a wind farm, and once an hour we have to drive down the road to the substation and check it out. My post is in North Texas, just miles from the Oklahoma border. Anyway, I was making my last run to the substation, and as soon as I got to the gate, I see this massive white wolf creature. It was not right. It looked like it was hunched, like the front legs were longer than the back. It was on all fours, and it was as tall as the hood of my truck, a Chevy Silverado. I did not see its face. I was looking from the back forward and saw its head turn back facing front of it. So I know it looked at me. I just didn't see its face. Now, when I see coyotes, my post is 15 miles into nowhere. They haul butt. Not this thing. It moved slow, and I watched it take 2 steps. Then I got gone. It was still there when I left. All the way back to my main post, I was wigging out, thinking this thing followed me back down. It creeped me out badly. This thing wasn't pretty like wolves. The fur was long and shaggy and filthy looking. It had a tail, but it kept it near the legs, so I couldn't say how long it was, but it was very bushy. I googled to see if any wolves are in Texas or Oklahoma, and they're saying none roam wild. In the end, it may have been a wolf, but by no means a pretty one, and something was very off with it. A little footnote for here. One of the guys that I work with asked me just last week if I got scared out there, and I told him no, I like it. He said he wasn't talking about people. Then he told me to stay in my truck while I'm out there, and he left. I'm thinking now maybe he's seen something. Today's third Texas subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, I'd like to share my encounter with you now. It's definitely an auditory encounter, as we never saw the thing. When I was 10, my father and grandfather purchased 56 acres of land out in East Texas between Lake Fork and Lake Tawakoni. The land was purchased from a wheelchair-bound man whose wife took over tending to the farm with the help of sharecroppers from Mexico that lived in a little shack on the back 5 acres of land right next to a pond. We called it a lake house. My parents purchased a mobile home, but it would be a few months before it would be delivered. My younger brother and I lived with our grandparents in an old pier and beam farmhouse for the remainder of the summer and into the beginning of the school year, so that we'd be able to start school that year on time. Despite the farmhouse dilapidated condition, it had a brand new, fully enclosed back porch that housed a washer, dryer, deep freezers, and storage units. There were 2 screen doors on the opposite side of the porch. One led to a carport and the other out toward the goat yard and crop fields. I've always been a very adventurous type of girl, so at 10 years old this place was a dream. My brother and I had a tree house. In every tree we could manage, we spent all of our time when we weren't helping harvest crops, playing in the creek and the ponds on our property. The main road ran in front of our property. About a quarter of a mile down, there was a massive hill with a bridge at the bottom of it going over a creek. Once you came up the other side of that hill, there was a sharp 90-degree curve that led you back out to the main highway. This was a gravel road, I should mention. At first, we liked to walk down that road and play in the creek, but then we started to notice how eerily quiet it was down there, and the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. As the summer grew to a close and the sharecroppers moved off the land, the son of the sharecroppers told my brother and I about a young girl who was found slaughtered in the creek just a few weeks before my family purchased the farm. Her murderer was never found. That left us with even more uneasy feeling. We began to notice how eerily silent and the feeling of being watched happened down at the lake house, which is what we called the shack on the pond the sharecroppers lived in. Actually, the feeling of being watched seemed to happen any time we were without adult supervision. One night, the goats and chickens were making an awful ruckus. My granddad had been told by some of the other local farmers that there was a massive cat snagging livestock from their herd. He immediately grabbed his .22 and told me to grab a flashlight. I obeyed, and we were out the door. Once we had cleared both gates that led into the goat yard, things were silent except for the sounds of the creaking floorboards of the hayloft above the goat barn. We could hear something huge walking around above our heads as we approached the barn. I think my grandfather felt the same feeling of dread that I did the closer we got to the barn. My grandfather leveled his weapon, and immediately there was this blood-curdling growl, howl, scream that came reverberating through our chests. I was frozen in place, my 10-year-old brain could not comprehend what we had just heard. My next memory is of my grandfather screaming at me in a tone of voice I had never heard before nor after this occasion. "Run, run, Kitten, run!" Kitten was my nickname my grandparents called me. We both ran the 70 yards, jumped over the 2 gates back to the house in what felt like a lifetime. My grandfather never told me what he saw, but from that moment until he died 6 years later, he never wanted us to go outside alone at night. Like I said, we never saw the thing, but the feeling and the sound we got from this thing was otherworldly. We lost a few goats that year and began keeping the mama and the babies on the enclosed back porch for the first few weeks of life in an effort to keep them safe. Same sub. Next follow-up message from her. "Hey Jeff, I have a follow-up to my encounter you narrated a couple of months ago. We recently went to my uncle's 50th birthday party at his house. He still lives on the land in East Texas that my poppy and I had the auditory encounter on. While at the party and after a few drinks, someone mentioned how incredibly dark it is out there and how beautiful the stars were. My uncle's usual goofy and boisterous demeanor changed immediately. He said, yeah, I used to like to go out there and stargaze, but not anymore. We asked him why, and he said we would not believe him if he told us. I knew immediately he had seen that damn thing. I just looked at him and gently said, "What did you see?" "There is some weird crap out here, and I guarantee you I will believe you." His light gray eyes began to well with tears as he lit a cigarette and muttered, "Shit, okay, here goes." He took a long drag and started off with, "Y'all know I drink. Y'all know I'm an alcoholic, but I swear to God this happened. I'm not bullshitting. I may get drunk enough to call a bearded officer ma'am, but never have I ever been so pissed I hallucinated crap like this. Plus I have proof this happened, okay?" We all reassured him he was safe to tell us what had happened. At the time, my dad piped up and said, "Brother, I remember you calling me when this happened. I know you're not lying." My uncle smiled a soft smile and took a drag off of his cigarette and said, "Thank you." My brother, he shook the tears off of his face and said, "Okay, so y'all know when I get hammered, I like to lie in the truck cab and listen to the radio and stargaze, right?" We all nod. He continues, "One night, about 10 years ago now, I was out there, laid up with my feet on the door panel against the driver's side and my head against the passenger side, cocked back looking at the stars. It was so beautiful." He paused, and I noticed he was visibly shaking. I was lying there smoking a cig, so the window was kind of cracked, about a quarter of the way open. So I'm lying there, singing like a fool, and all of a sudden the entire truck shook. It shook like when you drop a ton of gravel in the bed of your truck. I knew the tailgate was open, so I immediately was like, "What was that?" I'm lying there, still as can be, thinking one of you guys was messing with me. No sooner that I thought crossed my mind, something jumped on 2 feet up on the cab of my truck. You hear me? 2 feet. So now I'm freaking out, and I don't know why. I'm sweaty, I'm shaking, and it was like every last ounce of goodness in the world was sucked right out, and all that was left was despair and pure terror as my mind was trying to figure this out. I realized it's gotten dark in the truck. There was no more light, no stars. Nothing. He pauses, tears stream down his face. He looks up and says, "It was looking at me." The thing was on top of the truck, leaned over, looking in the window at me. I pissed myself. I've been drinking all my life, and never have I been sober up that fast. It was growling at me. I could feel it. My whole body shook as this thing leaned in closer and growled again. I could see spit dripping off its teeth, and it had the reddest eyes.
The most soulless, God-forsaken red eyes. It was a demon. I'm telling you, it was a demon that showed up in the shape of a werewolf. There, I said, it's a werewolf. He began to cry. My dad put his arm around his little brother, hugging him and telling him it was okay, you're safe, brother. My uncle, a man that had carried me in his arms as he ran for our lives into a cellar away from a tornado, the same man that used his body to shield me from a lightning strike that hit the barn not 50 yards from us, was reduced to rubble at the sight of this thing. I watched in silence as my dad and his other brother comforted their youngest brother and helped him gain his composure. It was a rather moving sight. These are 3 good old boys from Texas. They are all truly a man's man. Crass and burly, but in that moment they were compassionate and gentle with their brother, who is so clearly hurting. They just don't make men like that anymore. My uncle composed himself and finished the story. I screamed like I've never screamed before, without even thinking. I'm screaming, Jesus, help me, Jesus. The thing snorted or sneezed and looked pissed. That was when I knew I was dead. I had my 12 gauge and the floorboard, so I desperately was searching for it with my right hand. Before I knew it, the damn thing jumped off the truck and bolted on 2 feet, like an Olympian, into the woods. I sat there shaking for I don't know how long. I was so terrified to get out of the truck, I don't know. I sat there until the sun came up. I wasn't taking any chances with that thing. My 12 gauge would have been like a tummy tickle to this thing, so I really didn't want to engage in it. Kitten, you remember what happened to you and Dad in the goat barn, right? He saw that thing. He's seen it many times, which was why he was always walking the fence line at night and would lose his mind if you or your brother were outside at night. That's why he started walking y'all to the bus. One of the last things Dad told me before he died was, make sure them things don't get the babies, as he pointed to me and my brother, then motioned over to where my now grown cousins were standing. It has taken exactly 22 years for me to have confirmation, but now I know, without a doubt, my grandfather, Dad, uncles weren't just messing around in the bar for fun. They were warding this thing off our property by any means necessary. My grandfather died in 2000, leaving us with a gaping hole in our hearts and 1 man down on the surveillance team. Shortly after that, all of us but my uncle and his wife moved off the land. He says to this day he knows when that thing is around because even the wind goes silent. He won't leave his house no matter what. When that happens, and frankly, I don't blame him. I don't know what these things are, but I agree with my uncle. They are demons in the flesh. This encounter scarred my uncle, but it also rooted his faith in Jesus again, because he knows what the face of pure evil looks like. Tonight's final Texas subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, how are you? I'm a listener of yours, and I have a short encounter. I live in Midland, Texas. I had an encounter out in the field about 5 months ago. I was parked at an oil tank battery, and while sitting there, I noticed in front of me, about 50 yards, there was a white-tailed doe moving past me. Then behind her was 2 coyotes following the doe. Then out of nowhere, it seemed, I saw the blackest, deep black wolf looking, but much bigger, about 4.5, maybe 5 feet tall. Wolf-looking animal behind the coyotes. I can still picture it in my head. It was bigger than any dog or wolf. I'm sure of it. It had a long furry tail, big wolf-like head, and something that looked like a mane on its back. I just stared at it. It looked so clean and dark, midnight black. I just felt like it was something evil that had just came out of nowhere. Couldn't believe what I was seeing. I started to look forward to look at the deer. Then the coyotes, saw them looking back toward the big wolf thing looking animal, but when I looked back to see it, it was gone. Just like that, it had disappeared. I even went up to the tank to look for it in the higher ground, but did not see it. It was so eerie feeling. How could it have just disappeared like that? I still think about it and wonder if I really saw what I saw. Now I'm always making sure I look around my surroundings. I find myself while I'm out there looking over my shoulders when I'm out there.
And there you have it, folks. I do hope you all enjoyed this night ending bonus upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.